This is a presentation prepared by Jonathan Dempsey, an archaeologist with Jacobs UK Limited. Today, we would like to present the results of the archaeological investigations comprising geophysical survey, trial trenching, and metal detecting that were undertaken at Killiecrankie Battlefield in June 2018 by Headland Archaeology on behalf of Transport Scotland. The archaeological surveys formed part of the investigations identified as committed mitigation in the environmental statement. This was used to help inform the nature, scope and scale of detailed mitigation to be undertaken prior to and during construction. Transport Scotland decided to bring the work forward to answer questions raised by Historic Environment Scotland and Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust, and to help inform understanding of potential impacts on the battlefield resulting from the dualling of the A9. The studies were undertaken in accordance with a specification known as a written scheme of investigation, which was agreed with Historic Environment Scotland and Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust. The reports on the results of these archaeological investigations are available on Transport Scotland's website under the A9 Dualling Killiecrankie to Glen Garry project page. Before we come on to the results of the archaeological investigations, I will first present the results of the Lidar analysis, which helps with the interpretation of finds explained later. Lidar stands for Light Detection and Ranging, which is a method of gathering three-dimensional data using laser. At the request of Historic Environment Scotland, airborne LiDAR data available from SEPA was used to supplement the findings of earlier assessments. These included topographical surveys and contour plots, consultation of desk-based sources, site inspections, and walkover survey and archaeological investigations. The survey data was used to inform the cultural heritage baseline and assessment of archaeological impact as presented in the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, that is DMRB, Stage 2 and Stage 3 assessments. DMRB Stage 2 is when route options are assessed and compared to identify a preferred route, and DMRB Stage 3 is when the preferred route is developed and refined with environmental input to reach a design submitted for development consent. The key benefit for archaeologists of LiDAR is that it can be used to produce accurate 3D measurement of the landscape and associated topographical models, including digital terrain models. It also allows topographical analysis, such as the slope characterization shown on the key of this image, for example, whether a slope is gentle, moderate, or strong. Analysis of LiDAR supports the baseline information presented in the environmental statement, in particular the identification and definition of battlefield landscape characteristics and confirmation of our understanding of Killiecrankie Battlefield. It also allowed for the development of the three-dimensional model of the battlefield available on the project website. While some areas of disturbance outside the boundary of the existing A9 were already known, for example the possible location of a site compound for the construction in field F12 and the disturbance to Lagna Buig, the LiDAR also provided more detail on suspected disturbance identified on an aerial photograph from the 1980s and from the results of the previous ground investigation. Geophysical survey of approximately 8 hectares was undertaken in the areas shown. The technique used was magnetometry, which identifies variations in the Earth's magnetic field that may indicate archaeological features. The ground conditions were generally good and the soils were receptive to the magnetometry. This contributed to a high standard of data quality throughout, attested by the identification of field boundaries shown on Ordnance Survey mapping dating to 1867, but which are no longer visible above ground. No anomalies of definite archaeological potential were identified by the 2018 Geophysical Survey. However, in Field F7, an anomaly was identified as being possibly archaeological in origin. This is marked on the plans and shown on the slide as P1. Anomaly P1 is in an area of geological and topographical variation and is likely to be geological in origin. However, due to its location within the battlefield and proximity to the concentration of shot identified in metal detecting surveys in 2003 as part of the Two Men in a Trench TV programme, it was interpreted as a large soil-filled pit. In 2018, archaeological trial trenching of the pit-like features identified by the earlier 2016 Geophysical Survey was also undertaken. The specific aim of the archaeological trial trenching was to determine the nature of these anomalies, in particular whether they were the remains of burial pits associated with the battle. In order to evaluate each of the possible pits, 9 trenches were excavated, identified as trenches A through to I. No burials or any other archaeological remains were present in any of the trenches. The anomalies identified by the 2016 Geophysical Survey, resulting from geological and natural processes, such as localized iron panning or peat deposits, formed over the natural subsoil. As stated previously, the Geophysical Survey undertaken in 2018 identified no anomalies of definite archaeological potential. However, to confirm the interpretation of these anomalies as natural features, a sample was evaluated through the excavation of 4 trial trenches, trenches J through to M. This confirmed that these features were natural in origin and therefore not related to the battle. It should be noted that as the possible pit P1 identified in Field 7 and described earlier as located outside of the footprint of the proposed works, and therefore would not be impacted by the proposed dualling, it was not trenched. The final element of the archaeological investigations completed in 2018 was the archaeological metal detecting. Approximately 18 hectares of metal detecting areas were agreed with Historic Environment Scotland and Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust. A total of 1,432 metal objects were retrieved from the areas surveyed. Of these, 33 related to the battle and comprise 8 lead shot, 9 impacted shot or splatter shot, 5 assorted buckles, and 11 horseshoe fragments. The remaining 1,399 finds consisted modern agricultural metal, including fence clips, wire, nails, bolts, and assorted unidentified iron objects, such as tractor parts or similar, agricultural tools, and modern horseshoes, and are not discussed further. More details of these can be found in the report on the results of the metal detecting, which has been published on Transport Scotland's website. The results of the additional metal detecting survey in 2018 complements both the results of the metal detecting undertaken in 2003 for the Two Men in a Trench television programme and the results of the metal detecting carried out on behalf of Transport Scotland by GARD in 2015. It provides further evidence to support the location of the battlefield indicated by historical sources. Now we have a wider coverage of metal detecting survey, we can also see the results of the 2015 metal detecting survey were robust, and that a higher concentration of battlefield objects to the north of the existing A9 is real and not a result of survey bias. 3 shot, 1 decorative buckle and 4 fragments of horseshoe were recovered from field F10. This correlates well with the results of the 2015 metal detecting survey in field F11, immediately to the east, where musket shot, carbine shot, pistol shot, impacted lead shot, a button, and a sword belt fitting were all recovered. The recovery of munitions from these fields concentrated on and around the visible terraces, and a pistol ball from field F2 may indicate more intensive fighting in this area. However, as the pistol ball from field F2 was recovered from above a stone layer dumped to provide access, it is unlikely to be in situ. This contrasts Mackay's account of the battle, but is supported by the later account from the Clan Macleans, which records 7 minutes of engagement on this wing. The results of the 2018 metal detecting also indicates that the Jacobite right may have marched or even extended beyond the left of the government line, which is believed to have been anchored on the small hillock now occupied by Balcroic Cottage. Battle-related finds in field F3 comprise 4 lead shot, 1 musket and 3 splattered shot, and 1 horseshoe. Again, this supports the results of the 2003 metal detecting, and the recovery of pistol shot may provide a further indication of close quarter fighting suggested by the recovery of a grenade from this field in 2003. The recovery of 2 musket balls along with a splattered shot provides some evidence for the extension eastward of the spread of musket balls identified by Pollard and Oliver in field F7, which was interpreted by them as evidence for the final volley from the government forces at the Jacobites. Their interpretation of events at this location was that the Jacobites became visible at the southern edge of a localised terrace after being hidden from view during the latter part of their downhill charge. However, the lack of concentration of munitions from further east in field F7 may reflect changes in the local topography. From the sources of topographic analysis, there is a transition from a terrace in the west to a more even, moderate slope towards the centre and the east of this field, where munition is concentrated. This means there may have been a lack of screening by the terrace that may have resulted in the charging Jacobites being more visible to the government troops below. This visibility may have allowed the government to open fire on them from a greater distance, resulting in the dissipation rather than the concentration of munitions. The recovery of munitions from the terrace further down slope was interpreted by Pollard and Oliver to indicate the position of the government line, and this may be supported by recovery of further munitions in field F7 and F8, which comprised a musket ball impacted shot and 2 splattered shot. Field F9 was surveyed at 10-metre intervals in 2015. It was resurveyed at 2-metre intervals in 2018 to provide full coverage. In terms of the nature and concentration of battle-related material recovered from the 2018 metal detecting, the results of the two surveys are comparable in that they provide some evidence of fighting in this area. The lack of concentration of munitions from fields F9 and F16 located immediately to the north of the A9 may support Balhadi's statement that half of Hastings' regiment was not engaged. However, it does not provide much in the way of evidence for flanking fire from the same regiment that caused the Sleat MacDonalds to stall their charge. Given that Mackay records that he met Hastings marching up to their first ground, that's Urard House Terrace, it may be that Hastings' engagement with the Sleat MacDonalds took place further to the south than was previously assumed, potentially around the buildings indicated on this extract from Roy's map. No munitions were recovered from the 2018 metal detecting undertaken at Skirmish Field 1 or Skirmish Field 2. The only possible battle-related find comprised one horseshoe fragment recovered from Skirmish Field 1 in 2018. The nature of the material recovered from Skirmish Field 2 also indicates this field was disturbed in the recent past. The material included aluminium cans, household rubbish, and modern agricultural machinery parts. No weapons were recovered by the 2018 metal detecting, and this broadly correlates with the results of the 2003 and the 2015 metal detecting surveys, and may support the conclusion that weapons were removed from the battlefield following the battle for reuse. While use of Lidar has added to our understanding of the cultural heritage baselines used in the DMRB Stage 2 and Stage 3 assessment, the analysis did not change the cultural heritage baseline or the results of the assessment which were based on it. The Geophysical Survey, Metal Detecting Survey, and Trial Trenching requested by Historic Environment Scotland and Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust to inform their understanding of potential impacts on the battlefield that may result from the A9 dualling was undertaken in June 2015. The archaeological trial trenching confirmed that the anomalies identified by the 2016 Geophysical Survey were natural and were definitely not burial pits. No additional archaeological remains within the footprint of the A9 dualling works were identified by the additional Geophysical Survey. Trial trenching of a sample of anomalies identified in the 2018 Geophysical Survey as being geological in origin confirmed this interpretation. The results of these investigations have added to the corpus of information on the battlefield, confirmed the baseline and assessment of impact presented in the environmental statement for the A9 dualling, and, should the scheme be consented, will help to inform the further archaeological mitigation identified in the environmental statement.